Hi there, my name is William Bird and this is Chat with the GP, and it's about stress. Stress, the thing that seems to dominate most of the headlines at the moment for health and mental health. And it certainly, as a GP, I've noticed it increase hugely since COVID. It was already rising just before COVID, but now we seem to have a lot of young people, particularly who are dealing with stress and finding it a real problem. So let's see what is going on. Let's see what we can do about it in 10 minutes. So let me start off by going through some of the reasons why we get stressed and what's actually going on. So our brains have got one job really, and one job only, and that's to keep us safe. That's really what our brain is designed to do. And when we get a threat, particularly when we're a child and we're obviously more helpless, that threat doesn't disappear. It gets laid down as a memory in the brain, particularly if you've got adrenaline attached to it. It will lay down longer, and that will actually then keep us in vigilance that if that similar thing happens again, then we're going to be okay because we'll know about it and we'll avoid it. So those stress reactions that come up often when we don't quite know why we're feeling so sensitive, or something's annoyed us so much, or something feels a little bit sort of out of kilter to the situation, is probably because your brain has relived something way back and brought it to the surface, and something's triggered it and made you feel anxious. But we worry more about the reaction, the dry mouth, the palpitations, the shortness of breath, the queasy stomach, the feeling of doom, the feeling of chest tightness. We worry more about that than we do, if we know what it is at all, the original problem that caused it in the first place. So this is important when we go through life, in remembering that a lot of things that we worry about now have been embedded from things that have happened previously. And if we do have numerous stresses that we're just going into this sort of chronic stress where constantly everything is wrong and our resilience is low, then it will alter the way we can deal with the stresses that we obviously have to have. And we do need some stress. Some stress is really good, otherwise we don't get any stimulation and we get bored, and we can even get depressed by not having any stresses at all. So if you've got really good resilience, then when the stresses come along, your coping mechanism is way better and it all becomes an opportunity. You grab it with both hands and you think, oh yeah, I can deal with this. But it doesn't take long before you might find actually those same things, you're not feeling quite so confident now, and you now see those more as challenges rather than opportunities. And those challenges are because our perception is that we're just about going to cope, but it's going to be tough and difficult. But if we don't have much coping mechanism, then those stresses can turn into a threat. And that's where we start to rise in our adrenaline and our fight and flight, because we're now in a situation where we feel we could be overwhelmed. And don't forget, it's perception more than fact. We might well be able to cope with it, but we haven't got the ability anymore in our mind to be able to deal with it. Of course, one of the things you can do, and one of the things we'll talk about, is just taking away some of those stresses. Do we need all of them? We often pile some of those on top of each other, and just taking a few of those stones off the stressor will balance it very quickly. So that's one of the very first things you can do when we're trying to deal with stress. So very simply, we've got the autonomic nervous system. One part of it's parasympathetic, one part of it's sympathetic, which is the fight and flight and the adrenaline. And in the parasympathetic, you have two parts of the vagus nerve, which is the nerve that goes from the brain down into the diaphragm. One of them is the ventral vagus nerve that makes us feel really happy and content and open, and the dorsal vagus nerve, which shuts us down and makes us freeze. We're not going to have time to talk about that, but certainly that's why people can have a breakdown and not able to cope with anything. And we can all get that experience, even momentarily, during the day. So there are the normal ones of adrenaline and noradrenaline, but you also get cortisol and ghrelin. And I just mention those because people often feel that when they get stressed, their weight goes up. And this is why. Ghrelin is a hormone that makes you want to eat. And when you're stressed, it gets released. So is cortisol. So both of those together will increase your appetite, particularly when it's intermittent stress. There's another hormone called CRH, cortisol releasing hormone, that when that's released, which is much more when you're under chronic, really nasty stress, that it actually reduces your appetite, and therefore you can lose weight during stress. So some people can put on weight, some people, when it's more chronic stress, actually lose weight for worry, and that is an explanation of why. So completely normal, but your body's trying to conserve calories in that ghrelin cortisol type of stress. The thing is, though, it looks as though, from what I've said, that it's all laid down and we can't do anything about it. And actually we can. This is where it gets really exciting. Our brain can be reprogrammed all the time. That's why you practice in a sport, to get your, the way you hold a racket or play the piano or many things like that. Your brain is changing shape all the time as you practice, and you just have to practice in how you're dealing with stress. So the autonomic nervous system has been shaped by those previous experiences, as I said, but it's also reshaped by ongoing experiences. And if you can think that when you're getting one of those emotions of fear or anxiety or terror or anything that comes through, your brain is trying to protect you, and it's shaping it from the past. What you have to do now is accept those emotions. Just let them be. Don't try and fight them or run away from them, and let them pass, as horrible as they are. And if you are able to do it, and I'm not going to say for one thing that you're always going to be able to do this, and you may need therapy or help if it becomes really severe, but if you let these emotions pass, they will always go. And then once you've conquered that, and you've not had to kind of suddenly kind of get really kind of angry about it, or you've had to fight about it with, or you've run away from it by drinking or smoking or eating, all the things like we do, if you just accepted it calmly, then next time it comes, it won't be as bad. And if you keep doing it, eventually that emotion will disappear. So that fear that happened in the past, you don't even need to know exactly where it came from. That's a really important part of dealing with stress. And I'm not saying it's easy, but don't forget, this is all normal. This is your body trying to protect you as much as it possibly can. So one of the first things you can do on this is to understand when you get those emotions and where they've come from. And that's called kind of your neuroception. It's when it's being in touch with your inner self, your emotions, your feelings, those first feelings of anxiety that might come in your pit of your stomach, the feeling you don't feel quite right. Listen to those things, because the quicker you can get to the root of them before they've taken shape, the better it will be to get rid of them in the first place. So if you think about it as a river, first of all, sorry, I've just talked about two books that will deal with this. One is How Emotions Are Made. That's quite techie, academic, but really helpful in understanding how all of these emotions come through and how we can deal with them. And then Eliminate Negative Thinking is much more practical. So if you're feeling a little bit, kind of academic, go for the left one. If you just want some advice, go for the right side one. So back to my river. And this is a kind of way of just thinking that there's a pathway from when the brain first senses an awareness something's not right, through to perception, the state, the feeling, behavior, and then finally the story. And what we're trying to do is to be much more aware right at the source of this, rather than wait for it to come. Your behavior suddenly changes and you fly off, or you're rude to someone, or you upset somebody and you upset yourself, without kind of realizing. If you knew what was coming up there, you'd well be able to head it off at the pass. So the 10 positive things you can do to reduce the acute stress. So first of all is look at the positive things that are happening at the moment. We talked about that ventral vagus nerve. That's the here and now. And the more you focus on the here and now, the more the anxieties of the past or the worries of the future will disappear. There are some good things that happen at the moment. Look around you. things that people have said to you, people think beautiful things outside, just these micros, despite the world being totally stressed in your mind, just try and have that. And there's a whole thing on mindfulness we can do. Focusing on the breathing, we'll just touch that in a minute, really helpful as well. Exercise, incredibly important. You may not feel like doing it, but it really will help change the brain. And we know the brain changes shape very quickly going into nature, with the amygdala getting smaller and the hippocampus getting larger. Friends and family, the positive people around you, will put the whole thing in perspective and give you advice to prioritize your tasks. Stop doing the things you don't need to do to make life better, and just avoid negative people or the duty people if you possibly can. You may not be able to avoid your boss if you don't get on with them, but you can certainly stop having to feel dutiful to other people, because that will just add to your stress. Get hobbies, do something you enjoy, have a, whatever it is. Whatever I say will probably not be right for some people, but you know what things that you can enjoy. Focus on sleep, and remember these negative emotions are going to pass, okay? And just let them be, because every time you do that, you're going to reduce their impact later on. So finally, just dealing with the breathing. When you're doing your breathing exercises during that mindfulness, it really can help. So very first of all, use the diaphragm. Make sure that you lift the very pit of your stomach going up and down, and that actually increases your oxygen level. It's quite extraordinary how that impact can happen. Going through your nose, that can also increase your oxygen, and other parts of the brain that change shape when you breathe through your nose. So try and do that. And again, I'll just talk about a book in a minute about which can help you on this. And then breathe slowly. Do the square breathing, as it said, 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 4 seconds, 4 seconds. In, hold, out, okay? And then start again. What do you notice if things are not right? Well, if you get any of these things, lost interest in the things you enjoy, always tired, constantly on edge, struggling with your relationships, everything's an effort, you're often tearful, that's a big one, you're stopping to caring about your health, and despite all the things you keep going, those are the signs of moving into depression or chronic stress, and therefore you do need to see someone. So I hope that's helped. There's a lot there. I'll leave you that summary, but thanks very much indeed for listening. And if you do want to listen to the next one, every Wednesday at 1:30, we'll be putting the next one out, and I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you so much indeed. Thank you. Bye-bye.